I will support any government that places the transformation for the digital age and restoration of the defence and security and resilience of this country at the top of the list and resources it with hard choices, whoever that is. And if they don't do it, I won't support them at all.
Defence spending haunted the final days of Keir Starmer's premiership, didn't it? But is it about to become a thorn in the side of his successor, Andy Burnham? While the Prime Minister might have hoped his announcement in Barrow-in-Furness this morning to pledge a further £8.5 billion to Britain's nuclear deterrent would dampen down questions over defence spending commitments, it hasn't. Burnham's Chancellor, John Healey, who resigned as Defence Secretary from Starmer's government over insufficient spending, said on his way out that he was certain Britain should reach 3% by 2030. Asked today whether he would commit to that number, the new Defence Secretary Wes Streeting said this.
Well, as I say, I agreed with what John Healey said when he resigned from the government. The reason, by the way, that we've had, certainly in the last week or so that I've been in this post, a bit of back and forth in questions, both to me on Sunday, but to my colleagues across government, is because in terms of meeting the commitment to fully fund the Defence Investment Plan, which the Prime Minister has been clear about, we will set out in the usual way what we will fund and how we will fund it.
It's a huge pleasure now to invite Sir Richard Barrons, former commander of the Joint Forces Command and co-author of the Strategic Defence Review, onto the show. We welcome your opinion, General Sir Richard Barrons. Was the announcement today, in your view, a distraction?
So I don't think it should be seen as a distraction, because of itself it's important. The government is pointing to the enormous investment that's going on at Barrow, where we make our nuclear submarines, and that investment over a decade or more is converting a site that currently makes one submarine rather slowly at once into a site that can make two at once, and that secures the strategic deterrent. It secures our relationship with the US and Australia over new attack submarines. So that announcement is great for technology, jobs, prosperity around Barrow. It really matters of itself, but it is not about really at all the defence spending conundrum which Mr Burnham faces, just as Mr Starmer did.
Is he neglecting to address those spending problems, do you think?
So I think we might accept that this government is very early in office, and they may need a moment or two to work out how they fix the problem of defence, because the conundrum is their own analysis, their own words are really clear that the Defence Review must be implemented, and currently that would be implemented by 2035. And the problem is made much, much worse by the dawning realisation that there's no point being ready in 2035 if Russia could attack NATO, as the last Prime Minister said, in 2030. So not only have you got to find more money, you've got to find it sooner. And where our economy isn't growing and where we spend £1.4 trillion a year on ourselves, that's our public sector, but we spend it on things we're clinging to, a welfare offer, obviously health, education, all of those things that we really like, and in some cases assert that we absolutely must keep. So the only way they're going to fund defence better and quicker is by making really hard choices across the taxpayers' dollar, and we might allow them a moment or two to work out how they're going to do that, but we must not let them off the hook. This has to be done, or the UK will not be safe, certainly within the next 3.5 years.
Look, you had a big splashy announcement on Andy Burnham's plans for education on Tuesday, a big splashy announcement yesterday on Andy Burnham's plans for social care yesterday. Today was meant to be about defence. Tomorrow, there's a big splashy announcement about devolution. We haven't had a big splashy announcement about defence today. We've had the announcement of a commitment that had already been made. So when you compare it against those other areas, education, social care, devolution, defence is woeful, isn't it? Andy Burnham's approach to defence is woeful. There's no big splashy announcement there.
So again, I very much want to believe that in appointing John Healey as the Chancellor, who is steeped in the detail of this problem. He understands the risk, the challenge, the state of the armed forces, and how much it's going to cost, quicker than anyone wanted to fix it. And surely he would not have agreed to become Chancellor unless they had agreed that they would work out how to do this. And let's recognize they're talking about a 10-year plan. This will be part of the 10-year plan. So it might take a moment or two. However, what we absolutely, I think, as a nation want to be really, really clear about is that the challenge to our defense and security, which the government says is its number one priority, is clear and present danger. And until they do tell us how they're going to find that money to implement their own review, there will be doubt, and they will continue to be criticized for not settling the issue. And the sums of money are substantial, but they're not unaffordable. It's just they're going to come with really, really painful choices.
Yeah, so reaching 3% by the next Parliament would cost the UK an additional £17.3 billion in 2029 to 2030. That's according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. The commitment we did have from Andy Burnham today is to get to 3.5% by 2035. And as you've said, it's all very well committing to that. But if you're not going to commit to 3% by 2030, you're going to leave yourself with a huge uplift. Do you worry that Andy Burnham perhaps is putting spending commitments for social care over those urgently needed for defence?
So I think Mr. Burnham, and I've never met him. I think his political history and his preferences are all in the arena of social policy. That appears to be where his career has been, and the fact that he's arrived as Prime Minister in a world where, for someone like me, he is essentially a wartime Prime Minister. That's the scale of the challenge he faces, and it's probably the last thing that he wanted. It's probably not really what he expected, and it may take some time for him to get his head around the problem.
He did.
But that is the problem.
He did know about it. I mean, we've heard that he'd been plotting to be PM for the last 12 months. Even if it was shorter than that, there can be absolute consensus that Andy Burnham knew exactly what he was walking into when he went for the job.
Yeah, so let's be clear what he is absolutely clear about. The first thing is, when John Healey was the Defence Secretary, he said to the then Chancellor and Prime Minister, over the first 4 years of the implementing your own Strategic Defence Review, we are 28 billion short, which is a lot of money. And he was offered 13.5 billion. And John Healey said, and he's a man of huge integrity, I can't do that. That just means cuts, and I resign. Mr. Jarvis was then appointed, and he secured only an additional £1.5 billion over 4 years. And so the current gap for this government is £15 billion over the next 4 years to keep their own review on track. And then for the rest of the defence programme, which runs over 10 years, so we've still got 6 years to go, getting, as you said, 3% by 2030 and 3.5% on defence by 2035, and another 1.5% on defence infrastructure. This is a seismic change in our public spending pattern. We currently spend 5 times as much on welfare as we do on defence. We've been able to do that in happier times. It's not where we were, for example, during the Cold War. Most people, I think, recognise it's going to be a very painful adjustment. But the point that keeps getting lost here is we're not just having a conversation about how to struggle with our public finances. We are struggling with the fact that Russia could attack NATO, of which we're an important part, by 2030. And if you look at Ukraine, or indeed Iran, or Gaza, you see the price of deterrence failing, which is usually 45 to 50% of GDP. So the choice we have to confront is, if the threat might manifest itself in 3.5 years from now, you are going to have to not just fund the review at the original rate we agreed in June of last year, you're going to have to go faster, or deterrence may fail. And then what happens will be many, many times worse. And for me, and I know not many British citizens spend their days worrying about their defence. I wish more did. But for me, this is the defining issue of this government. And they have to come to terms with it, and they have to come to terms with it now.
Yeah. So, I mean, back to my question simply, do you worry, are you concerned that Andy Burnham is putting spending commitments on social care over those needed for defence?
So I don't know. I think we need him to tell us, and perhaps the vehicle is the new government's 10-year plan. I think we will all agree. Wouldn't it be lovely if we had a government that could put social care and welfare and energy and all of those things that we know we like and have got used to us? So wouldn't it be nice if we could just put more money into that? But the fact is, if we do that and neglect our defences, it will all be for naught, because the country could be wrecked in the way that you see in places like Ukraine.
Yeah, well, look, today the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said an object that crashed into a field in eastern Poland in the early hours of this morning was in all probability a Russian cruise missile. He said, and that missile was armed. He said he didn't think it was intentional, but it is one of those byproducts of having war in Europe. And it is a reminder again, General Sir Richard Barrons, how important defence spending is, and a big reminder that Europe, of which we are included, is at war.
If you ask President Putin, he is quite clear that he's at war with Europe, and he defines the UK as his number one enemy. That's convenient because it means that the US is in a different space. But the point is that war in our time, in the 21st century, it doesn't have any boundaries. And so one of the challenges for many British people is their mindset is essentially rooted, I think, in the Second World War, where the Channel was really relevant. But in terms of cyber war, of manipulation in our social media, in the distances ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, aircraft and drones can travel, if Russia were to turn its military power on the UK, and we were dealing, like Ukraine, with, on any given night, 50 ballistic and cruise missiles and 650 drones, that's what Kyiv has to deal with. We have to be in a place where we make sure that never happens, because we can deter. And right now, we are not able to do that in concert with our NATO partners.
OK, well, look, how long do you give Andy Burnham to make a big announcement on defence? You've put a lot of faith in him at the moment. You've given him some good grace, given Healey some good grace based on his background. Very briefly, when would you like to hear on a defence spending commitment? How long has Andy Burnham got?
So I hope it's not just me, but Parliament is in recess now, and it's summer, and it's been a long year in Westminster. But if this isn't clear at the time of party conference season in September, October, then I think we will be in for a much more challenging discussion about what do you really think you're doing with this government.
Yeah. Would he lose your support?
I will support any government that places the transformation for the digital age and restoration of the defence and security and resilience of this country at the top of the list, and resources it with hard choices, whoever that is. And if they don't do it, I won't support them at all.
Look, thank you for your honesty. Appreciate it. General Sir Richard Barrons, former Commander of Joint Forces Command and co-author of the Strategic Defence Review. Good to speak to you. Thank you.